Hey guys, it's Gabe. Wanted to get out a quick update before I took off for the weekend because tomorrow, September 22nd, is my 6 month post-op milestone. So that's pretty cool. And I'm gonna do another video in a month, hopefully on some really good camera equipment if I can get my hands on it, because that is my 7 month post-op, 2 year on testosterone update, and I would like to have a camera that's decent enough that you guys could see what I actually look like at this point, because this camera sucks. So I just want to talk a little bit about how I'm doing in my transition, what I've been thinking about lately in regards to gender. And I have this really interesting thing that I've been doing lately. I've been taking up this apprenticeship at a barber shop, which is it's a men's only space. It's hyper masculine. I call it locker room space. And it's been really interesting being a stealth trans guy, because I am just stealth at work, and just kind of trying to figure out how to fit in there. So firstly, my changes on testosterone are, I think, pretty much all done. I'm getting little bit of a hair explosion on my face, but I grew my beard out for like a week, and it was so bad. And I feel like my friends were looking at me like all shifty-eyed, ready to stage an intervention if I didn't shave it. So I did. You guys can see my sideburns are coming down to about there now. Everything under there was all just a scraggly mess, and things are getting kind of thicker under my chin. But other than that, yeah. Sorry, I've been kind of sick, so I'm a little bit spacey right now too. Yeah, and then healing at this point is going really, really well. I'll show you guys my chest real quick. Not that you'll be able to see much of it, but um, yeah. So I don't know. It might be a little too whitewash for you guys to really be able to make it out. Maybe if I step back, well, that's a little bit better. So the scars right here, I mean, it's a little washed out, but it's still kind of representative of how the scars are, much faded. They're not raised or anything. Here, there's a little bit of stretching, as you can see. It gets a little bit darker right to where the drains were. They feel great. Everything feels great and looks great. Yeah, it's just it's going very, very well. And I feel great, in that I've got a kind of body privilege now that I don't need to think about my body as much all the time, and it's cut down on almost all of my dysphoria. I'm really rejoicing about how, at this point in my life, I don't really have any dysphoria. I have moments, and they come up semi frequently. Regarding like lower dysphoria, but that's not something that I've ever been too preoccupied with. I'm pretty comfortable with my body as it is now. And yeah, I feel like radicalizing my ideas of what men look like has helped with that. So I've had a lot of exposure to trans masculine, trans male bodies through photography, self documentation, people out there who are willing to put their full bodies, on the internet and be like, this is what I look like naked. It's great. And I've been exposed to that, I think, enough in my life that, I've included the trans male body, in various different incarnations, post-op, pre-op, whatever, as this big category male, and that's helped in my own dysphoria, and it's helped me kind of just reclaim body parts that I would be dysphoric about because society would see them as female. So in my own privacy, and with my partner, I feel like that's really something that's helped a lot. And yeah, don't really have a whole lot of dysphoria in that regard. So, so I've started this apprenticeship at this barbershop, and it's kind of a dream come true because I've always wanted to be a barber. I'm really interested in like antiquated masculine rituals, straight razor shaving, all that stuff. I'm learning the whole 9 yards. But I find that when I go in, the hardest part so far has been, like I say, fitting in, and not feeling totally alienated and really scared all the time. And part of that is because it's like this masculine space predominantly frequented by, white, cis, heterosexual dudes. But it's also because there's a lot of because of that. There's a lot of hate speech. There's a lot of casual racism. There's a lot of homophobia. I've had several jokes being made about how like I'm gonna straight razor my boss and give him a shave pretty soon, and he's been like, "You cut me, I'm gonna make you into a woman," and stuff like that. Like uh, jokes regarding and alluding to having like in their minds what they consider to be a dick, and stuff like that. So it's been awkward due to that, and that gets you down. But it's also just because I don't see any guys like me. Like I don't see any men coming through there who have really thought about masculinity, who have thought about the space that they take up. A lot of guys see me, I think, as gay because I'm more soft spoken and I'm uncomfortable with jokes about titties and stuff like that, and they can see that. So it's tricky because I don't know how to call them out yet because I'm scared because I'm, in one of the demographics that they're targeting with their casual hate speech jokes and stuff. And and yeah, I think that it's just part of, but it's generally been part of my experience being a trans man, and just my experience of trans masculinity is just that, I think a lot of guys they talk about transitioning, and then they've got like all these bros, and they're really happy being in masculine spaces, and it's very affirming for them. And I'm quite the opposite, where I feel very affirmed when I'm around people who aren't cis men, women, cis women, trans men. A lot of gay men I feel kind of comfortable with, depending on what genre of gay man they are, whether or not they're super misogynist or whatever. But I guess part of that is like being retroactively targeted by their misogyny, if you know what I mean. I've had personal experiences of misogyny being directed at me through my experiences being socialized female, and I'm also a huge advocate for anti-misogyny. So it hits me on a couple of different levels, and that can feel very dangerous and very uncool. And but I think it's just generally not being socialized in the same way they are. And I feel often very dysphoric when I'm coming up against cis men, because I read this article recently about how, men are socialized to be assertive, and like in their conversation and their body language and everything, men from birth are socialized to be assertive. Women are socialized to be unassuming and to be quiet. And there's a study done that women talk about 75% less when men are in a group. And I noticed that guys, and I've always been very, very cognizant of how much space I take up in conversation now that I have masculine and passing privilege. But I noticed that a lot of guys, they're just interrupting each other all the time and talking really, really loudly and aggressively and assertively. And I haven't been socialized to behave that way. And and I don't really want to behave that way. So it's like this interesting, like it almost causes me dysphoria because my inability to interact with them as just one of them draws more starkly for me the differences between us. But I also cherish those differences and wouldn't necessarily want to do anything with that, because I think that my socialization has helped me become a human being that is, behaves with more intention in the world and has had exposure to ideas of privilege and stuff. So it's kind of like a catch-22. And I feel a lot of dysphoria in those spaces because of that. Just social dysphoria. A little bit of physical dysphoria just because I'm noticing now things like, how small my face is and hands and stuff like that, which I've always kind of felt uncomfortable with. And so it's a process, and I've talked about a lot in this video, and I'll kind of talk about that a little bit more if people want me to get into that in more detail, because I think that we don't necessarily give ourselves enough space to talk about feeling alienated amongst other men, because I think that it makes sense that that happens, regardless of whether or not you're someone who's dedicated to anti-oppression. I think that our socialization can make that tricky. Yeah. So I think it's all about finding your voice and feeling comfortable with yourself regardless of whether or not you fit in with those people, right? Okay, so that's all for me. I'm going to check back in with a really exciting update and a better camera, and yeah, I hope that everyone's having a good time out there. Okay, bye guys.